Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fantasy Tavern. It's been a long time coming, as usual. Thank you for bearing with me as we explore the limitations of when the episodes are supposed to be coming out. And I feel like this is a great time to release this episode since I don't have much going on right now and I am waiting to go back to work. The weather is terrible. It's February in Canada, which means the worst weather of the year for a lot of people, including myself. And what better way to spend the time than to hibernate inside and just stay away from the elements and from people right now. So if you are doing that as well, I hope that this will be a great chance to catch up on some of the Fantasy Tavern podcast episodes that are currently out, as well as this new one. The usual routine that people have may include podcast episodes, so I'm hoping that this will be one of them. And this is a very exciting one for me, one that I really wanted to explore a little bit because this is the 25th anniversary of the video and PC game known as The Sims. I think it warrants a lot of further research and development, and I want to share my love of The Sims with everybody out there. So that's yet another thing that you could do if you're stuck inside at home with no plans. You could get yourself into your gaming chair and fire up The Sims, or grab your controller, pop The Sims into your console, and just spend hours making the perfect house, making the perfect people, and discovering things about life that you may not be able to realize as a person in the real world. And that's why I really love The Sims, and that's why I wanted to do this episode. I remember first playing Sims games back when I went to gifted class. That would have been, I want to say, grade 5. So, or sorry, grade 4, I guess it would be. Yeah, because when you're in grade 3, you do your aptitude tests, I guess you would call them. And from those tests, they would determine your IQ level and certain academic and life skills. Very similar to The Sims, you might say. When you start your characters, you have a choice to select certain traits and skills and aspirations. Back when I was in grade school, we had these tests, and it was determined that my brother and I were both gifted kids. And so once a week, I would get bussed over to another school in Burlington, me and a bunch of other kids from different schools, and we would be involved in the so-called gifted program, which I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. It involved a lot of computer games of different kinds, but with an educational sort of leaning. There were a lot of free periods where you got to read or do whatever you wanted, and a lot of those free periods, I spent those free periods playing computer games. For a lot of people out there that are millennials, they may know some of these titles: The Oregon Trail, Oh Dear, and of course Sims games. So we had SimCity, Sim Hotel, we also had Myst, and a lot of games that involved, I guess, kind of like problem solving that they thought would be conducive to the gifted child. Perhaps that was just a low-key engineering, social developers, architects, civil servants, psychologists, a lot of people that are involved in those sorts of professions. I think The Sims would be very beneficial to people like that. It develops so many different aptitudes in those areas, which I guess is why those sorts of games were geared towards the gifted students. So that was my first experience with Sims games. And there's a lot of lore in The Sims and a lot of diehard fans and a lot of developments that were actually very significant to pop culture throughout the 90s and the early 2000s that I think is worth mentioning. Before we get started, because this is so special to me, I decided to design my own plumb bob. So, for those of you who are Sims fans, you will understand that a very key icon visual marker of the Sims games is the plumb bob, which sits above your avatar or player's head as you go through the game. And this is basically what The Sims has used as their logo for basically the entire 25 years that they've been in existence. A plumb bob is shaped in this sort of diamond up and down shape. It's kind of like the early construction level, I guess you could call it. The plumb bob is used to measure and determine exact points of areas of distance. The plumb bob will be used in design and construction to make established vertical or horizontal lines, and it's used in The Sims to show the mood of your character. So right now, the plumb bob is green, but in The Sims, it changes color to determine your specific Sims moodlet, as they call it. So red would be a very negative moodlet that you would need to pay attention to and then address the needs of your Sims. But if it's green, that means that everything's all good. There has actually been a redesign for the 25th anniversary of The Sims where the moodlet plumb bob has been outlined in black and has less of the actual more natural lighting tones that would indicate that it's sort of like a gem or a diamond of some kind. I guess possibly an emerald. It's got like a lot more thick black line outlines where it's more like a solid single color throughout. Whereas in this, I tried to add more of the sort of depth and monochromatic green tones that you would get if like the light was sort of refracting off of it. I took some cardboard and I took my acrylic paints and I went in with some different shades of green to create a two-sided plumb bob. I just kind of popped the edges out a little bit to sort of make it a little bit 3D as well. That kind of gives a little bit more interest. And then I attached it to the top of a headband, that old headband that I had, to create the illusion of it floating above the head. So I think I did a pretty good job. I'm pretty impressed with this plumb bob. I'm currently in a good mood, apparently, so that's always great. In addition to our plumb bob, we also, of course, have our beverages. Now, The Sims does have alcoholic beverages that they have added. There are non-alcohol options at the bar that you go to as well. There are some drinks that say virgin in front, but I guess we're to assume then that all the other drinks are made with alcohol. I got a couple drinks today. I've tried to keep with the theme of the green plumb bob. So we have here some Italian beer, the Peroni, and we have some Stella Artois, French, Belgian. We're going to pop those open right now. I'm going to do a Stella right now. And now, they don't have any weed or anything else in The Sims. You have to add mods to your Sims to incorporate other adult, I guess you would say, adult situations into your Sims game, which we will talk about a little bit later. Mods are kind of the new video game enhancement that's come out in recent years. PC and console games use a lot of people use mods in order to change how their character looks or change certain actions that they can do in the game. But for all you computer gamers, video gamers, millennials, I hope that this episode will bring you some sense of nostalgia and I guess kind of remind everybody about the origins of sim games, because not just simulation games, but open world games too. Because a lot of what the Sims introduced into the gaming atmosphere has continued on to this day and influences all the other games that everybody plays, right? In addition to that, the creators of The Sims have been pioneers of a lot of acceptance of different scenarios that a lot of people nowadays would, I guess, consider woke, which is a huge argument with, again, the US government that's currently in office. The wokeness of games, the DEI of it all, where The Sims, from a very early stage, provided the ability for gamers to not only customize their characters to be very specifically them, but also have relationships and social interactions that a lot of other people, religious groups, governments, etc., would not be approving of, but is reflecting the actual needs and wants of the gamers out there. Not all games are first person shooters, not all games are versus, not all games are guns and bloodshed. That is a very huge part of the gaming market, but The Sims actually showed in the beginning of its inception for a lot of the people that are like architects, taking from The Sims, just SimCity, from when that was actually the first incarnation of any Sims games. From SimCity to the present day, like there's architects and interior designers, and like I said before, civil servants, engineers, and psychologists, social manipulators, and dare I even say sociopaths, because there are a lot of things in The Sims that would attract certain people like that, unfortunately. But people who aren't normally like that, maybe that brings that side of them out. And so I think that that's a very important road to go down, to examine why people act the way they do in video games versus real life. So, is the simulation supposed to be exactly how you would act in real life, or is the simulation an opportunity to maybe get those feelings out that you would not normally be embodying in your real life? I'm not so conspicuously trying to reposition my plumb bob here. I'm so sorry, guys. It has to be the right. Yeah, and now it's like falling over. But anyway, and I kind of wanted to kind of bounce around a little bit still, to have that, like, to have the active aspect of it. There, that's better. We're gonna grab our Stella Artois and say cheers to everybody and welcome to our Sims episode. Let's go. So this Stella Artois is actually brewed in Canada in several different cities, which is great. So in addition to it being a international company, it's also brewed here in Canada. It was really just for the green color, I'll be honest. And then we've also got our other green things that are popping up here. Now we've got our beginning to the Sims game. So the beginning of the Sims started with a game called SimCity, also known as Micropolis or SimCity Classic. The SimCity project came out in the late 80s, early 90s, so from 1989 to 1991. And SimCity objective is to create your own city, develop both the residential and the industrial areas, and increase the population, the standard of living, and the environmental situations. And basically, the goal is to create a successful city that generates revenue and brings in people. You want to essentially avoid population decline and bankruptcy. Similar to The Sims, which there is a focus on a financial aspect and an economic aspect in a way, because the Sims games are very focused on your career that you have. The game was developed throughout the 80s and released in 1989. There's a lot of different companies that were involved in the original SimCity game. Broderbund, it's an American company based out of California. Within SimCity, you would be adding like your water supply, your energy supply, your food supply, as well as housing for your characters, and then you're basically checking in on all of those things. SimCity started as a computer game. SimCity started as a computer game and then moved to consoles, which is where we're seeing kind of like the foreshadowing of what The Sims would end up being. SimCity collabed with Nintendo in 1991, and they ended up selling 300,000 units and nearly 2 million units for the NES. So those 300,000 units were just for PC, and then all the other ones accounted for were for the home gaming systems. They had a lot of positive feedback because right in the beginning, people found the gameplay very addicting, and there was a lot of innovation in terms of the forethought for the urban planning, the economics, the politics of the game. And this was the beginning of Maxis's domination of simulation games. So in the beginning, when SimCity started, the main goal was just to build and maintain the city that you had. There was no real goals or achievements that you had to hit in terms of like quests or like a list. Things like that with video games happened much later. They also had different natural disasters and catastrophes that could happen to your city to add sort of a more realistic element to the gameplay. So Will Wright was a very prominent game designer back then. He actually was a co-founder of Maxis, which was then later absorbed into EA, Electronic Arts. And he is very crucial to the creation and development of all of the Sims games. And Will Wright has earned many awards for the Sims games and all of the expansion packs. So in the beginning, they won several different awards for both SimCity and The Sims. Whereas the Sim City and Sim Hotel and all those other things were focusing more on kind of like building up your equity, your buildings, maintaining the day to day management of those properties. The Sims took it into even more of a microcosm and made it more character focused than outer world focused. Maxis developed this game and EA published it. This is, again, part of the larger Sim series. So The Sims had a lot of different games that were released over the years. They had Sim Earth, Sim Farm, Sim Golf, a lot of different options for urban planning and development. But in 2000, that was when they made the switch from the sort of urban building development to focusing on players individually. As I said before, the Sims games are largely what is known as sandbox games. Pave the way for sort of future sandbox type games that involved a lot of open world or a lot of freedom with the ability to follow a main quest versus your side quests and your like bonus quests and things, missions as they may also be called. I've been playing a lot of GTA lately, and so they don't really call them quests, they call them missions. So that was one of the first games that had that element of creativity, that you didn't have to have a goal or an objective. The sandbox, as like children go into their sandbox and have their imagination run wild, that's very similar to what the Sims is trying to achieve. Second Life is also a very good example of that sort of idea. Roblox, Minecraft, games that have sort of like an open world aspect, but that sort of have an implied, up to the gamer a lot of the time, trajectory of where you're going to take the game. With The Sims, there's also a lot of add ons. So there's what's called the base game, which gives you the access to a certain world or a certain limited number of worlds that you can go into and interact with, build homes in, start businesses in, and start all your social interactions and your objectives that you want to follow. Whereas the expansion packs and the kits that you buy will give you even more options for very specific sort of genres or interests. So with The Sims, and I'm gonna pull up some of these because I don't have my actual Sims game on the screen right now. In anticipation for this episode, I did actually log back into The Sims 4 and started playing a few different characters. Right now, for The Sims 25th anniversary, they're doing a Blast from the Past event. There's 4 different weeks of missions that you can do involving a certain character that's a time traveling expert, and you're supposed to be investigating a time traveling thief with their assistants, basically. And then every time you complete a week, you get to claim different items that are bonus items as part of this Blast from the Past event. It involves kind of like asking your different sim neighbors and NPCs and whatever questions about time travel, accusing them of being time travelers and being time traveling thieves. His name is Emmett. Blast from the Past, Emmett. Emmett Relevart is a NPC. They originally appeared in the Sims 3 Into the Future and is now returning in this latest Sims 4 game. Not sure when we're going to get Sims 5. People are still asking about that. It's like the Rihanna album that we're never going to fucking get. Like, okay, girl, you got your makeup line, your lingerie line, you had your kids, you did the Super Bowl. Where's the new album? Where is it? But we're not going to worry about that right now because some good things take time, okay? So, Emmett Relevart is our time traveler. Emmett is time spelled backwards, as you may have already figured out, and players will interact with him to complete quests and earn special rewards. So that is actually the current 25th anniversary event that's happening in The Sims, is the Blast from the Past event. As far as I know, I'm on the 3rd week. I haven't actually quite started it yet. It started as of yesterday. So that was going to be the new week of the new Sims Blast from the Past event. The new old Sims Blast from the Past event. Because they're kind of bringing back old items that they had from previous games. Furniture and outfits and things like that. So check it out if you're a simmer. A simian. I don't know exactly what the Sims citizens are called. A Simizin, perhaps. I don't know. I just want to take a second to shout out a couple other people online, like which is another good point to make about The Sims, is because as a video game and a computer game, it attracts a lot of women players. A lot of people who are not normally drawn to video games have been drawn very strongly to The Sims and simulation games in general. So I follow a lot of people on YouTube and a lot of podcasts lately to get some insight on other people's experience with The Sims, the history of it, and actual gameplay. So we have a lot of people like Lil Simsy, Kelsey Mpiche, and there's a lot of people who are taking their love of The Sims online to YouTube or to Twitch. Another person I've been following a lot lately is Anya Baby. They're a really hilarious Sims channel who does a lot of mods to incorporate drug and alcohol use and like sex work, pimps and hoes and strip clubs and stuff like that. So if you ever wanted your Sims play to be a little bit more like Grand Theft Auto situation, there's a lot of mods out there for that. We'll get into the Wicked Whims, the spicy mods as well a little bit later, but this particular sim player uses a lot of those mods to enhance their gameplay, which is quite funny. I highly encourage you to check these channels out because they follow a lot of the independent creative gameplay, but also like some of the implied challenges of The Sims, like the legacy challenges and things like that, that will give you some sort of objective or aspiration outside of what your sim normally has. Just to make things interesting, just to kick it up a notch. There's another person called Gray Still Plays, who is a very popular simmer, who kind of is known for putting sims in very high stakes, set up for failure situations. So they'll be like, I'll put 100 sims in a room together in some kind of way and then see how many survive. That sort of thing. Or there's actually a lot of drag queens that are involved in the Sims universe. Trixie Mattel, Juno Birch, they're very well known for taking their love of The Sims and infusing that with their love of drag and kind of just their love of not taking anything seriously at all whatsoever and putting that into their gameplay. So it's really an option that they have built into The Sims that's customized for everybody, which is really nice. So, kind of going back to the origin of The Sims, and you can look us up on many different sources. SimCity and sort of like the city development games were what actually started the franchise. And then they took it into you can still design your own houses, but not necessarily your own city. So it kind of kept it contained to residential and retail businesses. There are certain options where you can go into lots that are predetermined by the game, both in base game and your expansion packs, and do some editing. But that generally requires a lot of cheats to enhance it. That's another thing we're going to talk about in The Sims is that a lot of the gameplay is enhanced by cheats that you're definitely encouraged to use and that are shared by the creators of the game. That's something that you're kind of expected to use. There's no expectation that you're supposed to just struggle through the game. Like, this isn't Monopoly, right? Like, everybody started off with the same thing, but based on how you go through the game, you could lose a lot, win a lot. Not a ton of control or choice. It's very based on luck. Whereas The Sims, you get the option to just do the game as it is in base game, or you can add your expansion packs, or you can do your cheats. And that's something that can augment your gameplay to a huge degree. With development of The Sims, a lot of what was used to create The Sims is that, as you may know, in the States, California is susceptible to a lot of wildfires, flash fires throughout the area that can really overtake the landscape very quickly. This was an issue that happened very recently in California. Again, that's a whole other sort of political problem, but even up to now in February, there's still issues with high fire risks in that area of the country. The reason that The Sims was created in large part was because of problems like that with the wildfires in that area of America. Will Wright lost his home during the Oakland firestorm of 1991, also known as the Tunnel Fire. This was a large suburban wildfire in Oakland and Berkeley during the fall of 1991, also known as the East Bay Hills Fire. This fire killed 25 people and injured 150 others. It destroyed almost 3,000 single family dwellings, almost 500 apartment and condominium units, and the economic loss was estimated at 1.5 billion, which in 2023, the last time they assessed the inflation for that, was about almost $3 billion. Because of this issue, and subsequently rebuilding his life in the wake of this 1991 firestorm, he wanted to adapt that life experience into a game. So he took this idea to Maxis to say, okay, so we've now had the Sim City, the Sims world, establishing the world and the actual construction of buildings and properties. but why don't we take it to people actually living out a second life? Foreshadowing to the game Second Life. Having a secondary life as an avatar character or multiple characters in a fictional world. Maxis initially was very skeptical. So The Sims was very slow getting started, but EA ended up buying Maxis in 1997 and realized that because SimCity had been such a great success, they really saw potential in growing the Sims franchise. The Sims was also, like a lot of games out there, as I mentioned, Grand Theft Auto and The Last of Us and other things like that sort of come to mind. The Sims was not intended to be a super serious, fully realistic simulation. It was supposed to be sort of almost a satire or a parody of the current culture. For Will Wright and the people producing the game was supposed to be sort of a send up of American society and culture, especially the consumer culture. A lot of people don't know this, but The Sims was actually one of the first games to incorporate artificial intelligence. The way that The Sims works is that the gamer has complete control over their Sims, but they can also let their Sims roam free throughout the world and kind of just act however they want. And the developers of the game built certain semi automatic, what we would now call, I guess, artificial intelligence actions into each character. So if they're idle for a certain amount of time, they will automatically go and do certain things. Some of those things may be based on their moodlets, and moodlets would be how they're feeling at the time. So a sim may be happy, sad, embarrassed, angry, a whole range of different emotions, and then they would act on that. But also, the artificial intelligence takes into account their Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was also taken into account when designing the Sims game. Which a lot of people who, we went through the school system, at some point in social studies, they taught us all the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was you start at the bottom with your survival needs, then you move up through kind of like your social needs, and then you arrive at the top of the plumb bob, if you will, which would be your self-actualization and self-awareness. I guess sort of going from what everybody's needs are, which are food, shelter, warmth, health, and things like that. So then they move up through social interactions, friendships, relationships, and then they go up to the top where it's like your spiritual element and your ultimate kind of actualization of how the world is and how you fit into it. Because you can't have that unless you are alive, I guess. So the hierarchy starts with making sure that you're fed, watered, and properly stored as a human before you move up to the more existential elements of being a human. That is, of course, what also influences your Sims to artificially interact. The artificial intelligence also is based on, whether your Sim has to go to the washroom or take a shower or eat something or isn't having enough fun. Those are all different standard needs in the Sims games. When The Sims came out, this was in 2000, so it only took 2 years for The Sims to explode in popularity. The 25th anniversary would have been on February 4th. So, February 4th of this year, 2025, is the 25th anniversary of when the very first Sims game came out. By 2002, The Sims had sold more than 6.3 million copies, surpassing Myst, as I mentioned. Myst was another one of my gifted kid games that I was obsessed with. I just love that sort of like mysterious problem solving detective sort of element, adventure video game, as it was called. So, Bruderbund also published Myst, so they have been involved in a lot of these very groundbreaking open world games. Myst was a mysterious island that you find via a magical book that you read, and it transports you to this island called Myst. And you solve puzzles and then you find people that you're supposed to help, etc., etc. Myst was one of the original best games ever made. So the fact that The Sims overtook it is a really big fucking deal. And the original game, all 7 expansion packs, and the 2 deluxe edition content packs were the first generation of the PC release. So let's remember that also before the major consoles came out that carried The Sims, which was PlayStation and Xbox, this was PC only gameplay. By February 2005, the game had shipped 16 million copies worldwide. In the beginning, there were 7 expansion packs only. If you actually log into The Sims 4 now, I think there's at least 30. Some of the more popular ones are the Cats and Dogs, the Get to Work expansion pack, Cottage Life. Life and Death is a very recent one that just came out, which focuses more on like you being the undead and the Grim Reaper. So in the new expansion for Life and Death, you can actually be the Reaper that comes and kills people in the game. That's something else I'm going to talk about in a second too, because death is 100% an element of the Sims games. You don't just live forever. You're not an immortal, unless you do a cheat and you want to be an immortal, of course. Perhaps that's part of one of your occult characters. Yet another thing that I'll talk about, in this is a development of one of the newer Sims, adding occult characters to make things a little bit more interesting. The idea is that you actually go through the stages of real human mortality. You're born as a baby, you go through your life, through your child age, through grade school, you become a young adult, an elder, and then eventually you die. And even then, you can still continue on as a ghost. You can be brought back as an undead character. The point of the game that I'm in right now, of the current game that I'm playing, I'm actually playing as myself as a living character. I also have the option of creating a ghost character now. So in the base game for occult characters, you have the option of alien or ghost. And you can actually choose the cause of death. You can actually decide what killed you, which is very interesting to me. So I decided that I died of laughter. So my family household setup right now is myself and my roommate Alex. He's in the game as well. So he has a wife. They had 2 kids. He also had kids out of wedlock with my character who turned into, oh yeah, that's the other occult character. So there's now in the game, this is something you actually have to go in and do in the game. So even though you haven't paid for all the expansion packs, there's a lot that you can do in the base game that you don't actually have to pay for extra. All you have to do is hop on the internet, watch some of these YouTube videos, go on Reddit. Even the official Sims articles for how to play the game are very helpful in how to kind of enhance your gameplay without having to spend a lot of extra money, which I really love. That's how video games used to be. The DLC is just too much. You have to think about your financially challenged players and players that don't want to have to invest their entire life savings into getting all these extra packs and kits so that they can play the game the way that other people are doing it. I really appreciate that The Sims has all these extra cheats and wiggle room for mods, because then people can actually do these things on the cheap. There's a lot of things to do with looking up the plant sim. So plant sim, what you can do, I'm going to give you a little hack here, guys, if for anybody who's like a diehard Sims player. So what you're going to do, I just looked this up the other day, you're going to max out your gardening skill on one of your characters. So you go into your Sims, you do your Control-Shift-C or whatever you need to do to pull up your cheat bar. You enable all your cheats, so testing cheats true or testing cheats on. And then you go in and you type in your cheat for whatever you want. In this case, you would add your max gardening skill. I don't know it off by heart, but you're gonna Google it. You're gonna copy and paste it into your cheat bar to max out your gardening skill. Now, doing this once should just automatically keep cycling through all the levels until you eventually make it to 10, which is a little bit different than your career skill. If you do a cheat for your career skill, you have to select your sim that you want it for and you have to copy it. Then you have to cut and paste it into the cheat bar and then keep putting it in until you reach level 10. Whereas the skill ones, you just have to do it once and then it will refresh until your sim is at level 10. So once you're at the level 10 gardening skill, you're going to buy a bunch of what's called the rare seed packs. So the rare seed packs will open up as you keep opening them, and it will reveal to you rare plants. You're going to keep opening them until you find your magic beans. There are 6 different colored magic beans. They look very similar to the mega seeds from Rick and Morty. You're not going to stick them way up inside your butthole. Don't worry, that's unless you're into that. But you're not going to do you're not going to do that. You're going to take the mega beans, you're going to stick them way up inside your butthole, Morty. As far as they'll go. As far as they'll go. So you're going to take your mega seed beans. You're going to go into... Sorry, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. So once you max out your gardening skill, you're going to go into build mode, and you're going to purchase the magic bean stump. So this stump has room for 6 different slots of beans. You're going to place it on your property. Once you open up all your rare seed packs to get all your beans, you're going to slot each color into your bean stump. Then you're going to open up your options menu, and it's going to have an option to water the stump. Once you water it, it's going to automatically turn into a giant sparkly purple willow tree that has a hole in the front. And then any of the sims on your lot can go into that tree and interact with the magical bean realm. Now, unfortunately, you don't actually get to see the magical bean realm. You just go in there and then there's kind of like a timer that counts down until your sim is done interacting with the magical bean realm. But when you come back out, you get the option of getting the forbidden fruit or certain special rocks or gems or things like that. So any sim that has the max gardening skill who eats this forbidden fruit, who isn't a ghost, I should preface that because I don't think it works if you're a ghost, will automatically turn into a plant sim. So you turn all green, you go full alphaba, wicked, you do your like little battle cry, and then you turn into alphaba, and if you do another cheat, you can actually go in and fully edit your look to accommodate that, because when you turn into a plant sim, it automatically gives you this really weird, like, pixie mohawk hair, and so you have to go in and, like, adjust that later. But anyway, so then you get to be a plant sim. So plant sims don't actually have to eat any food. They synthesize the sun, so you just go outside and steal it from another plant or just go outside. And they don't need any actual drinks. They just need water. So that's a benefit of being a plant sim. And if you get pregnant, there's a roulette sort of thing where you can either have a plant sim baby or a human baby, which is really cool. So in the game, I had an illicit affair with Alex where that resulted in twins, and one was a human baby and one was a plant baby. So now Alex has 3 human babies and 1 plant baby, and it's a whole thing. So they're now living in this like crazy thing. So eventually when I upgrade them more, I'll give you guys some more feedback on what's going on with the drama of the Sims family. But yeah. Now I'm going to take a little quick break to use the washroom. We're actually almost at the hour mark. I think we're doing pretty well right now. I'm getting really excited talking to you guys about the Sims. It's like my favorite thing ever. I just want to take a second so that I can like recoup and recollect here. I'll be right back. Oh, okay, we're back. Thanks for waiting, everybody. Just have to take a quick little bathroom right there. Oh, and Phobos has not come over yet at all right now because he's sleeping in his cat bed right now and being extra cute. So I'm not going to bother him. He's actually just chilling over in the bed here. Now we're going to continue with our Sims discussion. I just called this chocolate here. It's that time of the month, and I'm craving chocolate like a fiend. Where was I? Okay, so The Sims enhanced their previous gameplay, as I said, by having actual aging of the game through the 7 stages of life, which was the infant to elder, and then continuing that on into subsequent death and continuation as an undead character, which would be the ghost character. As I said, there's also occult options that they've added, which was the alien character in the base game. And if you add expansion packs, you can also play as like a werewolf, a vampire, other characters like that. The Sims added the wants and fears according to aspirations and personality. They have a set schedule of days of the week and time that passes, which you can keep as the normal time passing, or you can add speed up options to fast forward through interactions. There's established weekends. You can kind of customize the game to your own personal schedule that you want. The Sims has its own lore and timeline and chronology within its actual real world chronology. So The Sims 2 was released in 2004. The original game was dimetric projection, which is based more in like a 2D vibe, whereas The Sims 2 took it to the full 3D environment. And this is where they really started to make developments in that age spectrum and aspirations and goals spectrum of the game. Interestingly enough, Sims 2, so The Sims was released in 2000. The Sims 2 was supposed to be set 25 years after the original game, which is what we're actually celebrating now in 2025. And the different NPCs within the game that takes into account as well. The Sims 2 was not made backward compatible with any content from the first gen. They did reference and bring in some objects and features from the original series. They kind of just remade them. They had 8 expansion packs and 9 stuff packs. Then The Sims 3 was released in 2009. It was applauded for including, again, the open world, improved creation tools, enhanced build and buy mode. Wishes and goals were introduced in The Sims 3. The Sims 3 sold 1.4 million copies in the first week, making it the largest release in PC gaming history at that time. Whereas The Sims 2 was set 25 years after, The Sims 3 was actually set 25 years before. They use the Goth family as an example of how the game's timeline is monitored. So Bella Bachelor in The Sims 3, whereas in the original game and The Sims 4, they're named Bella Goth. They actually had 11 expansion packs for The Sims 3, and now we come to The Sims 4, which was announced in May 2013 and was released in 2014. As of January 2025, so The Sims 4 is actually the current active game of The Sims. Because of the 25th anniversary, they re-released games for people to download and play so that they don't have to go and like pirate them or find kind of recreations of the game online, which are very hard to play on newer computers. They actually re-released everything. The Sims 4 is taking place in an alternative timeline from the previous installments. And they've got 17 expansion packs, 12 game packs, 20 stuff packs, 38 kits, and 4 creator kits as of January of this year for The Sims 4. There's a lot of content that's been updated and re-released and tweaked from that time. As I said, the base game, the whole free-to-play Sims 4, in 2022, they devoted a lot of time to that aspect, because as I said, they wanted to have the game be accessible to people without them having to spend a ridiculous amount of money on actually playing the game. So right now, I only have the Get to Work pack in Sims 4. I haven't spent any money on any of the other packs. I am far too broke to be doing that right now, so that's not happening. Get to Work is actually a pretty decent first expansion to use. Some other popular ones are Cottage Living. Oh, Love Struck's another one. Cats and Dogs, Get Famous, and then the game packs they have are any of the occult ones. So vampires, werewolves, realm of magic. Anything that's got like sort of paranormal vibe to it has been fairly popular. They also have a few different spin-off games that came out throughout the years. There's The Sims Stories, which was a 2007 2008 release based on The Sims 2. One good thing about The Sims is that they've really optimized their gameplay and rendering for a multitude of different consoles and platforms. So the fact that you can have your experience with The Sims on consoles and your PC and have it be more or less the same experience is really important. Xbox is the console that a lot of people were the most impressed about, that The Sims could run more or less the same graphics and not a lot of glitching and not a lot of issues. So that's a really important thing to remember, is that not only was this released on multiple different playing platforms, but that it maintained a quality of gameplay that was unheard of at the time. And that has a lot to do with the diligence and the talent of all of the developers and programmers that they had. There was also The Sims Medieval, which came out in 2011, with an expansion pack called Pirates and Nobles. There's a few defunct Sims games, such as The Sims Online, The Sims Carnival, which I guess was based off of sort of the popularity of games like theme parks, the roller coasters and things, Roller Coaster Tycoon and shit like that. The Sims Social for Facebook, and The Sims Mobile. A lot of people are not super excited about the Sims mobile game. It's okay. I did download it and play it a little while ago. It's all right. It's just like most mobile games that are trying to achieve such a huge scale of gameplay. I really don't think it's possible. Like the Sims has just been way too meticulously thought out to, I think, translate to mobile. But it was interesting to try out. So the Sims era, as we talk about, we also have the console series Sims Bustin' Out was released in 2003. There was also handheld versions for Game Boy Advance and Engage. There was the Herbs Sims in the City. I don't know why I did this one. That's how I felt like I had to do it. The Herbs, they're trying to be urban with it. The Sims was released as like a reputation. It was focused on your reputation, your street cred, if you will. Within The Sims 2, there was also The Sims 2 Pets and The Sims 2 Castaway, also including The Sims Bowling, The Sims DJ, The Sims Pool. There was My Sims, which came out for the Wii and Nintendo DS. They featured Sims characters, but like the cute versions, like the chibi versions. They also had The Sims Free Play, as I mentioned, which was the mobile option. The Sims Free Play and The Sims Mobile had multiplayer and story mode elements. Within The Sims, we've got the Guinness World Records, which seems in the last couple episodes to be very much the litmus test of how well you're doing within the pop culture zeitgeist, I guess you could say. The Guinness World Records awarded the series the most expansion packs for a video game series and best-selling PC game series. Sales for this game as of 2017 were estimating from 36 to 50 million units. The series ranks 10th among the best-selling video game franchises of all time, with a sales figure of over 200 million combining all the entries in the series. As of October 2019, all of the Sim games combined generated lifetime sales of more than $5 billion US. There were some talks about Sims games. The most recent gossip, and I keep. Why am I letting the intrusive thoughts win? I'm trying to punch this fucking bomb off my fucking head right now. Anyway, so the most recent information I've heard about a Sims movie was with Margot Robbie, who, of course, recently did the Barbie movies. A concept that does incorporate a lot of elements of simulation because Barbie playing with dolls involves a great element of simulation, and the Sims themselves, the creator of The Sims likened the online digital Sims universe to a virtual dollhouse where you could dress up and make your Sims aesthetically any way you wanted and then have them enact any number of scenarios based on the gamer, the user, your personal choices, and you're enacting them through that player. Very similar to how children play with dolls in a dollhouse, or similar to how children play with Barbies. That is the most recent concept that people are thinking that is going to come out. This was actually in March 2024 that it was announced that they were trying to produce a Sims film similar to the Barbie movie that came out in recent years. There was also talk of a reality TV show featuring challenges that came up in The Sims, which I haven't actually seen yet. This was discussed back in 2020, so we'll see if anything comes out of that. Now, some really important things I wanted to talk about in terms of The Sims paving the way for more progressive relationship interactions in video games. The Sims and queer pop culture, because this is actually a very big part of their origin. Is a lot of people were not sure how they felt about The Sims incorporating the ability to have same-sex sexual relationships in the game. So for those of you who don't know, The Sims does have sex. Your characters can have sex and produce children or not. It's up to you. The act of sexual intercourse in The Sims is known as woohoo. Homer Simpson might be like, woohoo! And that is what they call sex in The Sims. So when you're going to the bed to have sexy time with another Sim, it is known as woohoo. So it will have an action where you click on your romantic interactions, or it will come up in like your main action wheel if you click on the one Sim that you're trying to interact with, and there may be an option to woohoo. And then what happens is you go to a bed, the two Sims, you put the covers go over your head, similar to this, and then the covers kind of move all around, and there's hearts that come out, and then there's like fireworks, and all of a sudden the covers go woo, and then you have officially successfully woohooed. And that woohoo may be just a simple, fun woohoo, but you can also woohoo with a try for baby so that your Sim will get pregnant and have a baby. Maintaining the realism of your actual sexual and parasocial relationships. There's also options within the game now to add pronouns, sexual orientation. You can select within your Sim creations of each individual character that you make whether they like men, women, both, or neither. You can decide whether they get pregnant or get other people pregnant or neither. You can decide whether they breastfeed or not. You can decide whether they pee standing up or sitting down. You can really customize a lot of personal things for your Sims if that tickles your fancy. So this was actually a issue in the beginning. Oh, I know, surprise. That back in the early 2000s, gay shit would be a problem in video games. And more shocking still to me is that in 2025, we're having these conversations about video games being too woke and including too much diversity for the sake of diversity, which makes literally no sense to me. But the fact that back in 2000, The Sims was groundbreaking for this very reason and has continued that into 2025. So, this is really one of the only open world AI based creatively open games that will also allow you to have sexual and gender control within your characters. Whereas a lot of other games, like there's been so many other games that have come out in recent years that give you character creation to like a immense scale. You can add like wrinkles and scars and adjust the weight and the hair texture. One thing I will say for The Sims and a lot of other games out there, for some inexplicable reason, they seem to have a problem with making curly hair for characters. It is 2025, and I still have yet to find a game that will just have hair like this. Like, how fucking hard is it to make a game with just curly ass hair? Every time I play a fucking game, I cannot find a hair texture that is even remotely similar to what I have in 2025. But thankfully, it is getting a little bit better for The Sims. I think in The Sims 4 now, I have found like one hair texture that I'm okay with. Lately, with The Sims 25th anniversary update, they've actually added a lot of very nice hair updates for the characters. So I'm hoping that everyone is enjoying that update to the character creation, because that has been an issue for so long. Having any sort of hair texture that isn't straight. But I suppose, to their credit, The Sims have addressed other things that aren't straight in their game, namely sexual orientation and gender orientation of the characters. So, The Sims and queer gaming. In 1999, right before the Sims game was actually supposed to be released, there was a lot of debate over whether they were going to include the same sex relationship option in the game or not. A lot of people who were investing in the game did not want that in the game for reasons at the time of alienating certain players who unfortunately were homophobic or just unfamiliar with that sort of option because it had just never been offered before. It was just a whole brand new unknown territory of gaming to include queer LGBTQ plus content for people. As the anniversary comes up, on both, again, the 25th anniversary of the franchise in general and also the 10th anniversary of The Sims 4, still waiting for The Sims 5, not sure when it's going to come out, but The Sims 4 has been the active game for just over 10 years now. In September of 2024, that was when it had its 10th anniversary. When The Sims came out in demos and was being presented at groundbreaking computer and video game conventions and meetups, they actually still included the queer same sex relationship options in the game as part of the gameplay. So you actually had in 1999, during the demos, a same sex lesbian kiss, which, contrary to what a lot of the people investing in the game thought, the actual gamers lost their minds in a positive way. And they actually were so happy that The Sims was including this for them. It allows now, from The Sims 4, the game allows same sex marriage, sexual encounters, adoption, and birth. The Sims back in 1989 2000 was introducing these concepts long before people could actually have these interactions in real life. Their governments were still very much opposed to same sex marriage and rights for same sex couples and families. A lot of people, before they even realized that they were gay or queer, were exploring these themes and these potential opportunities to just feel like a normal human being in society. And, there's obviously options for, quote unquote, male man Sims to dress in women's clothing and vice versa. They have that option as well. And the they them pronouns was actually introduced because of a petition, and the gender customizations for whether Sims can get pregnant or pee a certain way, a lot of that was from fan petitions. What's really nice is that Maxis and EA are actually listening to what the players want. The developers are listening to what their queer fan base wants. You get the opportunity to actually be yourself authentically while living in a simulation that isn't real, which is kind of a mindfuck when you think about it. You have this like joy of representation in a completely fabricated land. It's very unfortunate that the queer utopia can only be realized through a video game, and we're still going back and forth in the real world on how we can bring that into existence here. It just keeps sliding back into the dark ages where people are trying to take away rights for the queer community. So through an accidental inclusion of a gay kiss in the demo from the very first release of the first Sims game to now, where they've not only got all of these customizations for the characters, but they've got different decorations and furniture and other references throughout the game to and clothing to accommodate those things. And that can be part of the fight towards gender and sexuality inclusion. When we're having these conversations about like trans affirming care and people being afraid of drag queens and things like that, and also not just for the queer community but for like just real life challenges and successes of people who are trying to have children. So the Sims offers you the option of having like adoption, having the test tube babies, having your own children, and having families that don't look like the typical nuclear family that the conservatives and the far right, that sort of family unit that they think should be projected. There's a lot of other ways that families can look in this day and age, and I think that The Sims provides an opportunity to have a more realistic play out of what real families and real dynamics of the modern family look like. Not just for sexuality, but also for race and for class. And that's another big thing about The Sims that might appeal to people as well, is because you can have the option to live your life out as sort of a lower economic and lower class character. They have options of like off the grid simulations and legacy challenges and things like that. So, the legacy challenge in The Sims is where you have to maintain 10 generations from the same original Sims family that you started with, and then have 10 different generations of that same lineage. You have so many options in terms of how you want to express yourself through a character. It can be as realistic or as far from your current reality as you want it to be. So basically, right now in the game myself, I have currently unlocked two of the three secret base game worlds that exist within The Sims. You have the Sylvan Glade and the Forgotten Grotto. And then there's a third one, which is Planet Saxtan or something like that. I'm just going to look that up. And that can be accessed through one of your characters developing the scientist trait and then traveling to outer space, and then it finds you this alternate dimension where this planet exists. So that's another really cool part of the options within The Sims. So even if you don't have all of the expansion packs and all of the kits purchased, you can still very much have a fleshed out gameplay just with the base game. I think that's something that a lot of games, like the truly good games, really have that focus for people. They don't want you to have to spend $1 million on DLC or spend like 1 million hours in a game grinding to get free shit because you don't want to have to pay for it. This The Sims is very conscious of the fact that they want the gameplay to be enjoyable and the least amount of stress as possible. Like you're already gonna have stress doing certain things with your Sims, and then they don't do it. What you tell them to, or whatever. You've got to have that option of having quite a lot of content for your players that doesn't require them to have to sign up for an extra account and spend all of this extra money. Not so surprising as to why I like The Sims now, right? You've got so much options for freedom in so many ways that a lot of other games don't have, or that a lot of other games end up adding later on in their development, that they basically took a lot of cues from The Sims. So a lot of people have said that games like Second Life, Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, Disney Dreamlight Valley, Fallout Shelter, Minecraft, those games have all been, and like I mentioned before, some games like Grand Theft Auto, even, and The Last of Us, games that are leaning more towards an open world concept, enhanced character creation, improved dialogue and options for dialogue, and more freedom to explore side quests and side missions and not have to adhere to a main quest narrative. Those are all things that gamers are looking for nowadays. The enhancement of things like crafting or crafting adjacent skills. So in The Sims, you've got the repair, the handiness skill, cooking skill, fishing skill, gardening skill, all these things that you see in other games that The Sims incorporates within their other social or parasocial options like charisma, humor, flirtiness, meanness, playfulness, logic, all these other options of skills and traits that you can collect. And as you build them, it allows you to go off into other different careers or access other things within the game. And then the option of being able to, again, like I said, incorporate different cheats in for your economic options. So you can just go with the amount of money that you get at the beginning of the game, or again, you can just Control Shift C into the game, type in that Motherlode cheat, you get all the money you want to do anything you want in the game with. And there's still other things, other build mode items that don't get unlocked until you reach a certain career path or a certain skill level. So again, cheats are very helpful for that. The fact that The Sims from the very beginning did not shy away from cheats, it reminds me a lot of like I think I mentioned this before with like the whole MySpace and the advent of HTML websites and like kind of creating your own sites and kind of bypassing and adding certain things to enhance those. The cheat option kind of made people feel like there were these secret hackers within the Sims universe, and anything that makes people more interested in investigating that as a career, looking into STEM, looking into video game development and production, programming, anything like that, I think is a good thing. So that's why I think The Sims is also very important for that, because not only was it okay to cheat to get further in the game, and what rich person isn't doing this currently? We got the 1% trying to pay almost no taxes and keep all their money in offshore accounts and shell accounts and whatever. If only the rest of us the common people, the peasants, could have a cheat to get us on par with the rich people. If only we could have our Motherlode that would just drop some money in our bank account and we wouldn't have to worry about anything, right? We could just keep building our beautiful houses. We could make sure we're taking care of our children and starting businesses and traveling more and having more fulfilling relationships. A lot of that is because of finances. Like it or not, as much as people don't want to admit it, that is very much a thing. So the inclusion of the ability to kind of enhance your bankroll, something that you don't get a chance to do in real life, is very significant. Going back to the whole thing that I was saying about how The Sims was, in a way, sort of a parody or a commentary on Western society, that could just be more of those things. The land grab family being in the game is another huge indication of the fact that the game is making commentary. So the land grabs are supposed to be kind of, as far as I have read up on and looked into, they're supposed to be sort of similar to like the Gates family, like Bill Gates sort of vibe. So the land grabs are the richest family in The Sims, and they own this huge mansion within the Sims world. They also own the major industries. They bankroll the school. The reach of their influence is very large. There's sort of this implication, especially in subsequent games from the original Sims, that the land grabs are kind of shady and out of touch with the rest of the community. Johnny Zest as a character, I realized recently from doing some viewing of different videos and stuff. So Johnny Zest is actually a land grab, but he was exiled from the family because he wanted to pursue an entertainment career as a comedian and not follow in the family footsteps. So Johnny Zest as a character in The Sims 4, in my version anyway, he lives in like a small trailer-esque house, and he wears like the comedian jacket, which is like the blue sort of checkered sort of jacket, and he has no overt association with the land grabs unless you actually were to look into this lore. Then you find out that they're actually related. And in my current game at the moment, Nancy and Jeffrey Landgrab have both passed away, but they still exist as ghosts. The legacy of the Landgrabs lives on, and because I'm a ghost in the game, one of my characters is a ghost in the game, I actually want to hang out with them now because I think they're super cool. And as ghosts, they have no dominion or authority over anybody anymore. They're on the same playing field as me. Other characters in the game include the Caliente family, which in my version of the game, Alex is married to Katrina Caliente. Katrina, Dina, Nina, and Nico Caliente. I believe Don Lothario is also somehow involved in that family tree. We also have the Pancakes family, as I mentioned before, the Goth family. Bella Goth, as far as I know, is the character that has been in every single Sims incarnation that has ever existed. She's the one character that has been in every single game. As I mentioned before, originally named Bachelor, the daughter of Simis and Yocasta Bachelor and the younger sister of Michael Bachelor, married Mortimer Goth and had Cassandra Goth and Alexander Goth later on. As far as we know, Bella may or may not have also been abducted by aliens in The Sims 2. In an alternate universe of The Sims 4, Bella is currently living at Ophelia Villa in Willow Creek with Mortimer and her children. Bella has been the mascot of the Sims franchise for basically the entire 25 years. They did get a little bit of a makeover in 2022. Their color palette for the Goth family is very red and black, very sort of like stylish, femme fatale, alluring and mysterious and sort of sort of personality, but also very mysterious. There's a trend throughout the Bella Goth lore that they are very romantic and family oriented. Now, as I said, we have a lot of options for Sims characters. There are also a lot of other just random ass one off Sims character names that you don't really remember or think about. But those families who have been in the franchise for the longest, the Goths, the Landgrabs, the Pancakes, those are the Game of Thrones houses that you need to know in The Sims. As I mentioned before, there are some very prominent people who like playing The Sims. As I mentioned, drag queens and movie stars, TV stars. Doja Cat is a very popular simmer. Kiki Palmer, T Pain, Millie Bobby Brown. So there's a lot of very famous people who are into The Sims. So we're going to talk now about The Sims music and the language. So Simlish, I didn't really introduce the podcast with any Simlish words, but Simlish is a language that was made up very specifically for this game. And as somebody who loves languages and loves linguistics and like development and etymology and I guess dissemination of languages, I found this very fascinating. So in addition to the Simlish, you can actually slightly enhance your character's voice to make it have a certain vocal cadence and sound and timbre and all this stuff. There was actually a game back in 1996 as part of the Sims universe called Simcopter, and this was where Will Wright was trying to develop the Sims language specifically for this video game that didn't use English. He didn't want the Sims to have an English language because he felt that that was just going to endear it more to the Western audience and alienate everybody else. So he wanted to have a language that was specific to the game that didn't have an allegiance to any one place. In addition to that, he needed to have a language that would work and make sense and be understood with all the different nuances and cadences of voice that they wanted to put into the game, as well as the emotions of different reactions that the Sims were going to have. So Simlish not only has its own oral, like heard language, but it also has a writing system. The Sims and My Sims is where it was very prominently first featured. So the history of this, they first kind of started. So I don't know if you guys have ever played Animal Crossing, but Animal Crossing kind of has the same sort of idea. Animal Crossing, you can select the written language that you actually read to be whatever the language is in your own country. But what you actually hear is like a amalgamated animal voice noise. So the cadence of all the animals speaking, the different like tones of voice will be different, but then you also have the fact that they have a very specifically sounding voice that is not English. But when you read it, it's translated into whatever language you read. So we've got, it's sort of like a, it's like gibberish sounding. Very similar, I guess, in idea to what the Charlie Brown teacher's voice kind of sounds like. So in Charlie Brown, you've got kind of like that sort of noise that everyone else can understand, but to us, it sounds like gibberish or nonsensical noise. They kind of took that idea initially that they were going to use like different musical instruments and sounds to replicate the voices of Simlish, but then they decided that they were just going to use real human voices but create a completely separate language, similar to what they did for like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. So Will Wright experimented with a lot of real world languages, including Ukrainian, Navajo, Tagalog, Estonian, There was a lot of Slavic undertones that were initially part of the language project, but they wanted to make it less specific. They also used Swahili, Cherokee, many different sort of native indigenous languages. The development and phonology of the language still does have rules of how it works. Simlish words, for example, may use up to two consonants sequentially, but they can be used in unorthodox ways in comparison to English. The vowels, some create a diphthong that doesn't exist in English. Simlish and English having equal amounts of energetic masking, but Simlish does not suppress semantic processing. Semantic processing is the state that occurs after somebody hears a word and encodes its meaning. Grammar, there's like the difference between exclamating sounds, and also there are things that, like, similar to English, there's loan words. So any word that we have in English that's like, I guess they couldn't figure out a word for, they're just going to put a similar sounding word in Simlish. Similar to other games like Grand Theft Auto, where they have like a radio station where you can look up different songs by different artists. Like you can go into your stereo or whatever and select country, pop, spooky music, children's music, blues, whatever, world music, and it will give you a selection of all of those different genres of music, but with Simlish instead of English. And if you listen very closely, there's a lot of popular celebrities, popular artists who loaned their songs or loaned their voices to the Sims games to create an actual soundtrack that is like exactly the same song they had in English, but they translated it into Simlish. Musicians that gave songs to The Sims include Katy Perry, My Chemical Romance, Flo Rida, the Pussycat Dolls, Kelly Rowland, Paramore, Lily Allen, Natasha Bedingfield, Carly Rae Jepsen, lots of people. I think Pink also contributed some stuff. Janae Aiko. Yeah, so there's actually, sorry, I don't think it's Pink. It's a song that sounds a lot like Pink, but it isn't. But you can actually go online and look up lists of songs in The Sims 4 and actually find all the artists that contributed to them. So, like, similar to Grand Theft Auto, which I've been playing a lot lately, where, Flying Lotus, for example, contributed an entire radio station of original songs with them hosting. The Sims has both radio stations, DJ booths, karaoke machines, and in-house soundtracks that they have at like bars and things like that you can access. You can change all of the different options for songs to basically whatever you want. There's also a lot of original Sims music that references a lot of, I guess, sort of like 1950s elevator music or like efficiency working music, if that makes sort of sense. It's kind of like a it's like the Mr. Sandman song, but like super sped up is like the only real way I can explain how it sounds. It's like a very like montage esque sort of vibe to the music. But yeah, there's, in addition to that, so the majority of songs that seem to be written here are by an artist called Ilan Eshkari, but you can circle through all of the different Sims options here to find actual celebrities who loaned their voices to the game, and they basically just took a song they already had or like the vibe of like their genre and just translated it into Simlish. Okay, we're gonna finish up this episode with a little Simlish lesson. Anybody that's been on TikTok or YouTube has probably seen the creators doing certain popular songs in Simlish and whatnot. Perhaps on Duolingo one day they'll have a Simlish lesson, Simlish translator, because it's essential phrases I think that people should know. I think that that's very important. Okay, so we're going to start off with the basics. So we got Sul Sul and Dag Dag. So Sul Sul means hello. Dag Dag means goodbye. That's your basic greetings. Au revoir wafsna. That means nice to meet you. Yibs for yes and nabe for no. Staple words. We're just learning for some staple words. Oh, here's a very important one. When you have your drink and you're ready to toast or say cheers, you go spansa, using for any kind of celebratory occasion. All in a delivery, like most cheers. You've got Humble Borpna, which is happy birthday, another very important one. Birthday celebrations are very crucial in the game if you want to age up your sim. So having birthdays where you get your sim a cake with candles on it and you get them to blow the candle out, that will determine a lot of the times whether your sim ages to the next age range, like from child to young adult to adult and whatever. They can age up in other situations too, but that is mainly what you're looking for when it comes to birthdays. It's really just a reason to age up your sim and also gain social points because you have to invite people to your birthday party and get them to interact as part of your event. If you get a present from somebody or somebody does something nice for you, you can always say Vadish, which means thank you. Jadosi means I love this. Garsha means that's funny. Zawoka Janava, I think you're hot. A very important line. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of mods for The Sims, Wicked Whims being a very infamous one, where you can get your Sims to strip into the nude with no censorship areas on their body. So normally when your sim gets naked to take a shower or a bath, or does it just, to be inappropriate or let their freak flag fly, what have you, there's a bunch of pixelated squares in the way to block the naughty bits. However, if you download certain mods, these will take those pixels away and you can see all the goods, the ass and titties and the dick. If you have a sim that you want to engage in more flirtatious or romantic endeavors, this phrase may be helpful, especially if you're using certain mods to enhance those sexual encounters. Some of these mods that are sexual in nature will also allow your sim to have sex in different positions or locations other than just the bedroom or perhaps the shower. I think that you can actually add like an observatory or something on your property that they can woohoo in as well, which I think I did recently. But there's actually mods where you can have your sim like on their knees doing stuff, and like it will still kind of pixelate it out, but like you can see what the positions they're in, and it's definitely not in just in a bed under the covers where you can't see anything. So check out those mods if you're so inclined. As I said, Zawoka Janava is a very important phrase for hitting on people. Preferably not, it says here, preferably not in the bathroom by a dumpster or any of the other weird random places that you would utter these words. Oh, to take an ongi is a selfie. Boobasnot. So actually, booba or boba is a phrase that is used instead of like swearing in a lot of simulation games because they're trying to be all ages family friendly, so they're trying not to use swear words. I also very recently checked out a fairly old game called Habbo Hotel that some of the millennials might recognize from back in the 2000s. Habbo Hotel was, again, basically you create a very basic avatar type character. You have a little apartment type room that you can, as you play or as you spend your own money, you can furnish to your desire, and then you can also jump onto different rooms and servers to interact with other players. You can join guilds, you can do different activities with people, things like that. So booba or boba was the word that they would use in place of a swear word if you were trying to swear in the game. They actually had different like blockers in place where they would automatically replace the word with booba, which is quite hilarious. So booba snot, that just reminded me of that. It means I don't like you. Blursh, Meshaloop Blursh. Excuse me, get out of my way. Furby Nerbs. You have some nerve. Ugh, Grobel. Means, gross. Or it can also mean, like, are you kidding me? Or really? Like, are you kidding me right now? That can also be an instance where you would use the word Grobel. Shoofly, there's a problem. Or help me. Shoofly. Awasapoa means I'm bored. Oh, another very important one for The Sims. Atote! I really have to pee. Oh, Phoebe Lay! I'm hungry. Wabadibadu means I'm on fire. This can actually happen more than you think. A lot of early gameplay of The Sims involved things catching on fire that you then had to extinguish and then deal with the subsequent fallout of your property being burned and replacing items, or there are certain times when your sim could die by being set on fire, things like that. Turkey Nurbler. It sounds very absurd, but it actually sounds like turkey. It means, does that feel better? The Ribby Wibs. Remember this. There's actually different words that are sim swear words, sim cussing. So plum, dwom, and britch are all swear words. Anytime a sim would be swearing at you and they use those words, that's how you would know. Are you Moochie Peachy? Shashubi. Maladay! That's hilarious. Presupapu! Velosaberg. Moochie Peachy. I don't know what Moochie Peachy really is, but it sounds hilarious. If you go on the Sims wiki or on Wikipedia or any other kind of sim creator made pages, you can find some Simlish to English translators in order to take your language learning to the next level. In all of the different games, it's also slightly different as they're developing the Simlish language. It becomes more frequently used and more specifically and accurately used based on the rules that they created for Simlish within subsequent games. The Sims first edition did include some common phrases, wawa bralala, common snana, Phrasenrat, but the number of available phrases were limited. The original voices of the Sims were provided by Jerry Lawler and Stephen Kieran. And as I said, the Sims it goes through the different incarnations to add more Simlish and refine and correct the language as they go along. Because as we all know, The Sims is supposed to be an art imitating life situation, and we're taking what the mechanics of a real life language that you would be learning in real time, and language changes and evolves with the usage of it, right? So as the Sims gets developed, it's changing as it goes. Sims may say greetings in a shortened version in Sims 4 versus the first incarnation. Other common phrases include Yabahorne, Awuvene, Yimbala, Muchi Pichi, Deroy, and Dorishi. There are Sims that will demonstrate the proper greeting trait versus the more casual. If you look on different signs within the Sims universe or in like on the Sims website where there's like different notes and updates to coincide with the English or whatever language that you're reading in your respective country, they will also have a Simlish version, which is represented by a completely different alphabet, a different writing system, some sort of code more than an actual full written language. Again, it's roughly translated. The Simlish versus the actually matching the language that you're talking in isn't ever always going to match up. The Sims Medieval actually went one step further with this and made a precursor to Simlish, which was Old Simlish. And it more resembles British and French, like Old British and French, and it does take some cues from Middle English, which is very interesting. But yeah, if you actually go into the different Sims games from like The Sims 2 till now, you'll hear certain songs like Pocket Full of Sunshine by Natasha Bedingfield, Hot and Cold by Katy Perry, Black Eyed Peas songs. I think that that is a great way to keep the game more realistic by using actual artists and actual songs in the game is a really cool idea. Similar to how, as I mentioned again, Grand Theft Auto, similar to how Grand Theft Auto got like I think like 250 licensed songs to use in their game. The Sims kind of went one step further by not only getting licensed artists, but to get them to perform and lend their talents in a completely made up fabricated language, which is extremely cool to me. I love languages and linguistics, and it makes it so much more of a realistic game and like yet also a departure from reality. I just think it's wonderful. This is the whole thing with the Sims and simulation games. You can play them kind of as your standard normal character, or you can play them as a complete departure from how you are personality wise. You could be as good or evil, or as mischievous or innocent, or as outspoken or shy, or whatever as you wanted to be. You can amass any number of skills that you may or may not actually have in real life and use those to your advantage. You can have friends and family that you may not actually have in the real world. There's so much of a weird option for like having this sort of insidious aspect of it, because there's of course always these stories of people who are going to like be sociopaths and do fucked up shit to their Sims, like take the ladder out of the pool while you're swimming so that you can't climb out of the pool and you drown, or put a Sim somewhere in a house and then build a room around them so that they can't get out and then they have no way to eat or go to the washroom, like cheat your relationship skills so that you can woohoo with people faster and have babies and, for example, like play the field so you're having babies and relationships with everybody, and you have babies by every single different type of species in the game. You've got like a mummy baby, a werewolf baby, a vampire baby, an alien baby, a ghost baby, a plant baby, all the babies. Like Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, but like the occult version. There is definitely a worry, a concern that comes with those sorts of options for people, because maybe that's not something that's healthy for people to be realizing. But like, do we really want to have somebody that's obsessed with somebody else going into a game and creating a whole separate alternate reality with a person that they are like obsessing over? Oh, hello.
Hello.
It looks like Alex Sim is home. I'm just finishing up my episode, actually. So
No.
that's the ultimate, I guess, argument with video games, right? Is it something that is beneficial to the population, or something that is it something that's alleviating people's base instincts so they don't act on them, or is it encouraging people to act on their base instincts? Does it really just depend on the person who plays the game? Those things might have already been there and they're just bringing them out. It's not really developing anything, or is it actually doing that? That might be a whole other discussion of psychology for another day. But as somebody who has grown up with video games their entire life, it's something where I think it's very much what's going on with your real life social situation, family situation at home that's going to determine how you interact with these simulations. Because I guess some people are going to engage with them in a different way depending on what their real life environment is, right? Some people are going to interact with a simulation and do exactly what the simulation is expecting you to do. Like, for example, if you had a pizza making simulation game and you had to make a pizza that was exactly like half of one topping on one side. I'm referencing an actual game right now, just in case you didn't know, which is called Good Pizza, Great Pizza. It's a mobile game. I highly suggest you try it out. So, it's a game where you literally have to take people's pizza orders and put the exact toppings on the pizza they ask for and cut it into the exact number of slices and cook it the exact way that they want it, etc., etc. And then you progress through the game. So some people are going to do that exactly the way that they're supposed to, and some people are going to want to watch the world burn and not want to do anything actually the way that the game wants you to, and they're going to just fuck everything up on purpose because it's funny to them. it, so there's really no right or wrong way to play a video game in that sense. It's really at the mercy and the discretion of the gamer themselves of how they want to interact with this game. And I think that's what's so great about The Sims overall is that it's allowing freedom of gameplay. It's not trying to really restrict people too much and put them too much into a box. It's showing them the expectations of regular society. You know, you're supposed to have a home with a shower and a toilet and a stove and a mailbox where you pay bills and a bed where you sleep and a job that you go to every day. But that doesn't actually exactly have to be the case either. If you want to branch out from the life that you know, and if you're not used to living in a humongous three-floor mansion with a basement and a million rooms and features and all this different furniture of like the most expensive kind, if you have a huge family and you want to just be alone, or vice versa, if you don't have a family and you want to see what it's like to have like four kids and adopt a couple and have some test tube babies and whatnot, if you want to just be a dumpster diver who lives off the grid and digs for buried treasure and time capsules to get your money. Like that's something that you can decide for yourself in this game. There's no one really telling you what you have to do or be and no one really holding back. Or like for example, if you're in a situation in your life where you can't be open about your sexuality or your gender expression, the game allows you to have whatever kind of voice you want and have whatever kind of clothing and body build and relationships that you want to have, and nobody's stopping you from living your truth. Even though it's not exactly the truth because it's a fake game, it's a simulation, it's all just pixels and code. But for a lot of people, that's enhancing their joy and their quality of life more than what life is actually going to give them. And since 2000, The Sims has been providing that for people. I think that's something that's very special and something that should be recognized, not only being the architect of your property, but the architect of your own life and your own destiny in a way that you can't be in real life is something that we're all still fighting for, and something that games like The Sims provides access to in a very major way. There's so much more about this game that I want to go into. I think I've covered everything that's important to do with this. Oh, and there's also a cat. You can also download the Cats and Dogs expansion pack if you would like to have pets, or the cottage life, or do off the grid. I haven't brought Phobos into my game yet, but maybe one day when I actually get some money again, I'll buy some more expansion packs. I get so jealous of looking at all of the simmers online that's like, oh, what world will we go to today? And there's like 25 different worlds that you can go to and choose from. And I'm just like, oh, ugh. I want to go to Ravenswood today. I want to go to whatever Stratford on Avon or whatever the fuck that one is called, and look at more worlds and develop more things. But thankfully, through doing some research online and looking at some different simmers that have really opened up the possibility of just finding the hidden worlds and the hidden hacks and cheats and different things that you can do in the base game, there is so much that you can do in just the normal Sims game. So I highly encourage anyone who hasn't played it in a while to try it out. Anyone who hasn't played the original Sims or Sims 2 to re-download it and try it out, because apparently it is available again now. And to let it all out, just go off, do anything and everything that you want to creatively. It's been nice to travel back down that road again, to give it a second look, and just like the most ridiculous outcomes that do come out of that game. People are unpredictable, life is unpredictable, life is full of unexpected setbacks and drama. If you're neglecting one aspect of your life for too long, and then it slides down and it becomes negative. So that's another thing the Sims teaches us, to kind of be aware of all different aspects of our lives. If we decide to pick a specific career, or we decide to start a family, or we decide to engage in social relationships, that we have that awareness. This is, I think, the end of the episode. My plumb bob is starting to sag. It's starting to become a little flaccid. You can't really see because I keep strategically pushing it back so that you don't notice it's falling down like this. But yeah, the plumb bob is starting to bob a little bit towards the flaccid side. So I think it's time for this episode to end. But anyway, thank you everybody once again for joining in on another super duper fun episode of Fantasy Tavern. I hope that you learned lots. I hope that you go and download and try out The Sims today. Tell them TD Cat sent you. And until next time, stay warm, stay safe, and don't get lost and get boots up in the snowdrift, as my mom would say. And we'll see you next time on Fantasy Tavern. Dag dag and bye!